Garrett's team. That team is well known. It's the most probably dedicated Trick Room team in the field today.
Yes.
There is nothing on this team that really functions outside of Trick Room. You've got a Trick Room setter, you've got a support Pokemon to help it. You've then got Rhyperior, which is in Trick Room one of the most potent attackers around. Torkoal, same thing, just on the special side, whereas Rhyperior focuses on that physical side. Dusclops, one of the finest Trick Room setters around, so bulky, so difficult to play around. And then another support Pokemon, so it's 2 supports, 2 attacking sweepers, and then 2 Trick Room setters. Obviously making the right call is going to be so important, but looking over at Brian's side of the field, I think there's a number of Pokemon on there that would probably relish a Trick Room. The Mudsdale in particular, well known for being slow, same with Gastrodon. And if you can get those in and do well, then this game could really turn on those kind of leads. Obviously, as we mentioned just now, Stalwart Duraludon is going to force some people not to lead with the Indeedee because it can just get hit by a Flash Cannon or a Max Steel Spike.
Well, we are getting into game now, and you can see the leads here. It's going to be Arcanine and Grimmsnarl now coming in from Brian, and Garrett is bringing in Dusclops and Indeedee, definitely trying to set the Trick Room.
Yeah, well, Psychic Surge is going to come out from Indeedee, and that's important because obviously Grimmsnarl relies on Prankster, and that causes so many problems for it. Dusclops does get to Frisk, so it sees the Wiki Berry and Light Clay on the Arcanine and Grimmsnarl respectively, and that kind of gives Garrett, I think, a little bit of an idea exactly how the Grimmsnarl on Brian's side is going to play. It's carrying the Light Clay, so you can pretty much say at that point, okay, 2 of your move slots, a Light Screen and Reflect, and go from there. But, the big thing to take away from this turn, there's no real way to stop Trick Room.
There really isn't a good way to do that at all, but you called it with the Light Clay from the Frisk, from the Dusclops. We are going to see a Reflect come out here. And Indeedee actually using Safeguard. I think that's pretty important as Dusclops gets set up to Trick Room.
Yeah, nobody wants to get burned, nobody wants to get caught any way short. One thing to note, and I think this is something that I've talked about with a few players, Garrett has this weird situation right now where Dusclops and Indeedee are both on the field, and you had to bring those to safely set Trick Room, but you really don't have the pressure to follow it up immediately. Like, Indeedee can do some good damage, don't get me wrong, but it's usually used to provide a more supporting role. Dusclops' attacks, pretty limited in what it can bring, but, Nightshade really starts to add up with a pretty easy kind of bit of math to do if you're a player. You're not worried about how much damage you're going to do and go from there. We're going to see Garrett try and mix up that board a little bit.
Is going to mix up the board. Dusclops going back into its Pokeball, and Rhyperior now taking its place. One of the Pokemon that can really take advantage of that Trick Room. And now Grimmsnarl going for the second move that it can do with that Light Clay. And Arcanine taking just a bit of chip. Will-O-Wisp, though, going to be protected by Safeguard on Garrett's side.
Yeah, that's Safeguard. Helping Garrett out there. I think Brian maybe forgetting that the Safeguard was in play from the first turn. You don't usually see Indeedee make that play turn 1. And now that Rhyperior has come in very, very safely indeed. There is options to see if you can get it to do even more damage. Not usually the pairing that they have right now does it, but we'll see if he can activate potential items. Brian forced the switch. Of course, Trick Room is ticking down a little bit, and this Mudsdale could be a great addition to the field.
We'll see what this Rhyperior ended up actually targeting, but wow, the Swagger actually finding its mark onto the Mudsdale, and Mudsdale is going to be protected by the Safeguard. What a really interesting play.
Oh no, Brian spent 2 turns setting up Light Screen and Reflect, and they've just been completely taken out of play by this Brick Break on Rhyperior.
Wow.
That is huge. Brian's first 3 turns have been real tough. He's got the Safeguard Swagger play out, which is really nice, but now there is so much riding on this Mudsdale. Of course, having a boosted attack is not a bad problem to have at all, and maybe he's going to have to just keep investing in that, deal with the Rhyperior, and then look at playing with the screens again, because you should not be setting those up in front of a Brick Break Rhyperior that just revealed it turn 1.
Yeah, and I think this is about time where we get a chance to see some Dynamax Pokemon as well.
Absolutely.
You set it up so nicely there. You definitely can't use Brick Break when you're in the Dynamax form, so we'll see what happens on this side. But for Brian, it's going to be the Mudsdale that ends up getting that Dynamax energy, making itself large in size here on the board. And that's going to be dealing a lot of damage if it's able to use that Swagger boost that it got before. But Indeedee, using Follow Me, is going to keep the Rhyperior on Garrett's side very, very safe here as Grimmsnarl goes for another Swagger, and the Psychic Terrain is protecting the Indeedee.
Oh no, that Psychic Terrain, the Swagger being pulled away. This Mudsdale was desperately trying to do some more swagger shenanigans to take it out. Indeed, he is going to be felled, though. It is going to set up a sandstorm, so that's something that he's probably going to be able to take away immediately with the change in to the potential Torkoal, which you have to imagine is in the back, right? But the thing about it, Psychic Terrain's about to run out, may allow a few more turns of play from this Grimmsnarl if it can stick around. Dusclops coming back, though, knowing the Trick Room's about to end, probably helps. Learning the item on this Mudsdale was really nice as well. Finding out about its Assault Vest means he gets to think about that a little bit before he starts swinging at it with the Torkoal, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, this is kind of where Rhyperior might get a chance to shine. Having Brick Break already as a move that has been revealed on Garrett's Rhyperior, that might be something just to think about, because Assault Vest only helps you with, I believe, special defense.
Yes, it does. The swagger going back towards that Mudsdale. That's now a huge boost to his attack, and no confusion because of the safeguard. Dusclops, though, immediately hazing. Oh my.
Wow, all stat changes are going to be eliminated, which means that the double swagger, no more here. Brick Break also again onto the Grimmsnarl, just chipping away at it, and Max Quake not going to be able to do nearly as much here because of that haze. And Rhyperior survives.
Yeah, that haze has been absolutely crucial. I've got a feeling this is going to make things real rough in a second. Obviously, the special defense boosts aren't too important right now, but there's the confirmation. Weakness policy on Rhyperior. Oh no.
Oh, no is right. Weakness policy is going to make that Rhyperior very, very scary. But Trick Room has ended for this turn, so it's going to be another one before this Trick Room gets set back up.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we're really quite far into the game with only Indeedee knocked out. But this Grimmsnarl has been sat on the field. It's been swaggering. It's been setting up screens. And literally at this point of the game, none of it has stuck. The fact it's still on the field is real nice, but none of it has stuck in play. And it's, do you want to try and set it all up again just to have it undone? Finally going to see the Dynamax, but, I think this Rhyperior just wants to make sure it can stick around potentially, or just guarantee the max guard, which would probably help it a little bit.
Max guard would help, especially when you're trying to get Trick Room set back up here, but let's see what Brian read. Rhyperior is going to go for the max guard for Garrett. And Grimmsnarl using Light Screen again. This time the screens are a little bit safe now that we don't have the ability to use Brick Break because of this Dynamax Rhyperior, but it read correctly into the Max Quake, and that's going to stall out I believe the last turn of Dynamax.
Yeah, that's going to be the second one, because it Max Quaked the Indeedee, it Max Quaked the Rhyperior, set off its weakness policy, and then Max Quaked into the Max Guard. So this Rhyperior, yeah, it's lost a lot of health, but it's now in a great position. It's got all it needs. It's got its Trick Room. It's got the boost from weakness policy, and should start being able to just start knocking things out on Brian's side. I think this Grimmsnarl probably wants to be put out of its misery a little bit, taken off the field, because all it's tried to do has just been taken away from it.
Well, now it has a screen up.
Oh, yeah, one screen and getting another one up would be great. They are going to stick, because Rhyperior, obviously Brick Break becoming Max Knuckle, definitely helpful there, but you've got to think Brian's wondering, in game 2, is he going to mix it up a little bit and change it around, or is he just going to try and do things differently? We are going to see Garrett's last Pokemon, though.
It's going to be the Hatterene.
Oh, I like that.
I like it too. That's a very unique kind of Pokemon to bring, and you do have the second screen set up here by Brian's Grimmsnarl, but it's time for Rhyperior to do some damage with the weakness policy proc. It is going to go for a Max Quake into the Mudsdale, and that is going to be a clean knockout.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind that was going to get it all the time. It's real easy to just set that up. This Rhyperior is pretty much going to be tasked with just sweeping Brian's team right now. We know that Arcanine is one of the options in there. That's not going to enjoy facing down the Rhyperior. Duraludon probably wouldn't either. Togekiss probably wouldn't enjoy a Max Rockfall. So if it's Gastrodon, maybe there's some better options here. But Garrett's really played this well. While he's not been able to take knockouts before now, he's just been in control of the whole board all game.
I want to see what this Hatterene does.
Well, Hatterene, for a Trick Room setter, surprisingly, surprisingly powerful as an offensive threat as well. That's why I think a lot of people like setting up Trick Room with Hatterene, because the following turn, you can just start dealing damage with ease. So it's not a bad selection at all. And if Trick Room does run out, then he's already in pole position to start dealing damage. Looks like Grimmsnarl's going to make its last move of the game.
Yeah, Hatterene going for the Dazzling Gleam here will connect with both Pokemon. Grimmsnarl is going to get knocked out, but not before using Fake Tears onto the Rhyperior. This is the second time we've seen a Fake Tears today.
Yeah, I mean, Fake Tears has been been an interesting addition. It's been around for a while, but knowing it can get it off with priority through the Prankster ability means you're guaranteed to move before your special attackers and go from there. The special defense, you know, getting boosted there by the Max Quake, I definitely want to counteract that, especially if your last Pokemon is this Gastrodon. That said, Gastrodon is currently faced with dealing with 3 Pokemon on the board for Garrett, and he's got one more turn, I believe. Oh no, this is the last turn. But he's still got Weakness Policy, and he's still got Trick Room.
Yeah, Trick Room is still going to be around for 2 more turns here, as the Rhyperior does lose its Dynamax form. But Hatterene is also threatening a lot of damage, and I think that's the important part that you mentioned, Adam, is that it's going to be difficult for this Gastrodon to survive through both of these Pokemon.
Yeah, I don't think Gastrodon's going to be able to take attacks from both of them. Interesting to note, though, that he has bought 2 Trick Room setters, a supporting type, and, of course, a big offensive threat in Rhyperior, and just left that Torkoal at home. So definitely considering exactly what he wanted to do there, and gives him a nice option to pivot to in a later game. That said, Rhyperior and Hatterene are just launching attacks at this protecting Gastrodon.
I think that's important, though, because what I think Brian needs to do right now is use the Protect, see what kind of information they can glean from what this Hatterene can do, because you already know it's more than likely going to be a Trick Room setter, but what else is it carrying?
You get to find out, and Psychic and Dazzling Gleam have been confirmed. Those are pretty much the 2 most common coverage moves on it. Gastrodon trying to double protect to see out the rest of the Trick Room, but Hatterene fires off Psychic. Gastrodon taking it pretty well, even through a Life Orb attack on Rhyperior. Just keeps going with the Brick Break, just breaks that screen pairing that we did see set up. And now Brian has to give up a little bit more information about his Gastrodon, as we do see the Papa Berry. And there it is, Trick Room's over, but it's still a 3v1 in Garrett's favor.
Papa Berry not going to confuse this time.
Yeah, Brian definitely taking the time to learn his nature and mint mechanics when it comes to that. Gastrodon, given the opportunity to attack, will get to knock out Rhyperior. So, you know, with the screens down, though, I think this Hatterene should be able to just tidy up the game.
Yeah, Hatterene can go for Psychic, could also go for the Dazzling Gleam, but it is going to be the last attack that it does, and Garrett taking game 1.
Yeah, and I think Garrett played that really, really well. Took his time through the setup phase, really bounced it around kind of wisely, put himself in a good position, and had so many answers to all of Brian's really... honestly, I think Brian's techs are really cool. I like the Safeguard swagger. I really enjoy the double screens with Light Clay over on the side with the Grimmsnarl. I think those have been good for a little while now. I think those will be real prevalent and something you have to consider in team building for quite some time. So all of that work that he put in was taken away by Brick Break and Haze. I think Brick Break is a really nice addition to Rhyperior, and at the same time, you know, I really like Haze on Dusclops because you've got Trick Room, you've got Will-O-Wisp, you've got Nightshade. That last slot's really up for grabs, and knowing about the amount of boosts that you can get in a game, just being able to Haze helps out so much.
I would agree with that, but I think that also gives so much information for Brian to play around now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that he's going to make some adaptations. His team definitely doesn't hate being in Trick Room. You know, Mudsdale, Gastrodon, Duraludon, not the quickest Pokemon. But outside of that, I mean, he's still not as dedicated to Trick Room as Garrett is. And that, I think, is the problem.
There's just, I mean, what an interesting composition that Garrett is running too, because it's not likely that you're going to see 2 Trick Room setters on the same team. I feel like you only kind of, you put your eggs in a basket, and usually it's just one basket.
Yeah, I think what was really cool here was, you know, there were some good choices by Brian, but it just wasn't quite enough to deal with that dedicated Rhyperior. And Garrett made a really smart play at the beginning in team preview of Game 1 by not leading the ever so common Indeedee Hatterene. He respected the stalwart Duraludon and said, no, I know that I'm not going to be able to follow me. You are going to be able to deal with my Hatterene that way. So he respected that. He bought Dusclops instead, and that adaptation put him in a great position. I think Brian was expecting Indeedee Hatterene maybe, and kind of played into that a little bit. Took the time to set up screens and Safeguard and Swagger and such, but then when that all gets removed, you've got to look at a different plan for game number 2.
Well, we are going to be getting into game number 2 shortly, and I wonder if there are going to be different leads because that Grimmsnarl just didn't get a chance to do quite what it wanted to for Brian, but maybe knowing that there are certain things to play around, that Grimmsnarl can get a chance to do a little bit more here. But it is going to be Grimmsnarl and Duraludon this time now for Brian, and on Garrett's side of the field, it will be Indeedee and Dusclops.
Yep, they do land. The lead worked for you in Game 1. There's no reason to stop it. You get Psychic Surge. You cause some problems there for, of course, the Grimmsnarl. Though the Grimmsnarl, on Brian's side, usually Prankster is, you know, Tailwind and then moves that go over the field. These really don't. I mean, this is all about setting up for his own team and going from there, but maybe screens again, try and take some more damage. Maybe screens again and then try and call one of those switches. If you can call one of those switch-ins that he's kind of forced to make into something like the Rhyperior, he could be in a really good position. So we'll see. I think the first couple of turns, I think turn 1 definitely plays similarly for Garrett, but then the onus is on Brian to start making adaptations.
Well, indeed, he's not going to stick around for too long here for Garrett. It's actually going to be a Rhyperior switch in here. That might be a little risky depending on what this Duraludon decides to target, and we are going to see a Dynamax turn 1.
Yep, Brian just Dynamaxing immediately. That's exactly what you need your Duraludon to do. You need it to be dealing as much damage as possible. So we'll see about the targeting. If Garrett switched that into a max Steel Spike, yes, he'll get weakness policy, but there's also a whole lot of damage that he's taking right there. We'll see where this turn does go from there. Obviously, Light Screen from Grimmsnarl doesn't have any reason to mix that up. Does have to worry about the Brick Break now. And we'll see exactly what's going on. It was Max Wormwind that he decided to go with. A good option, I think, there. And Rhyperior not getting the chance to do anything, just taken out. Wasn't Dynamax, wasn't able to deal with Max Wormwind.
I mean, it was important to note that Duraludon does have the Life Orb, so it's going to lose a little bit of HP here, but that was a risk. That was a really big risk that Garrett took to switch in the Rhyperior there.
Yeah, I mean, he took the risk and he got punished for it. It was a real smart, safe play, I think, there from Brian to just throw an attack and see what he could do with it. We're now, Garrett is forced back to exactly where he was in game 1. Yes, he does have Trick Room set up, but his biggest Trick Room sweeper from game number 1 is already gone. And right now, Brian doesn't have any risk of losing Duraludon. I don't see it going anywhere with these two on the field from Garrett's side, so probably wants to eke out a bigger advantage and then get this game 2 really in his favor and confirmed.
We're not seeing any sign of giving up just yet. So maybe there's a trick up Garrett's sleeve. It might lie in that 4th and final Pokemon, but for right now, it is going to be Dusclops and Indeedee taking the field just to see what they can do. Yeah,
they've got to try and maybe buy a little bit of time as well, wait out the Duraludon Dynamax. So try and go through that. That said, Dusclops is leaving the field. We are going to see it's the same 4 from game number 1. Hatterene on the way in there, definitely trying to provide a little more offensive pressure as Brian decides that Grimmsnarl doesn't want its second screen. That's interesting that he didn't bring both screens in that game before switching out, and valuing Arcanine a little bit more this turn.
Maybe because of the Intimidate as well. I know it doesn't really help in this situation, but you never know what else is in this Arcanine's kit. We didn't get a chance for it to see what it can really do, but Max Steel Spike will find its mark into the Indeedee, and that hangs on.
Yeah, I mean, it just about clings on, a minuscule amount of health left. Pretty easy to pick up somewhere down the line. I think Garrett's got to be pretty happy that it wasn't Hatterene who received that Max Steel Spike, who would not have appreciated it in the slightest. Still, though, we've seen the psychic attacks really not phasing this Duraludon, and Fairy type attack isn't going to get there either, so really this turn is going to be tough.
Indeedee switching back, Dusclops coming back in its place. We at this point have seen all 4 of Garrett's Pokemon, and the Frisk is going to show us again that Arcanine is running that Wiki Berry, but it's time for Garrett to make some moves. It's going to be the Dynamax now. Yeah,
Dynamax that Hatterene and try and deal as much damage with it as you possibly can. You have to. I think a Max Mindstorm is probably one of the best ways to get around it and take advantage, of course, of that Psychic Terrain from Indeedee, but at the same time, Duraludon just doesn't seem all that threatened by any of it. Hatterene is going to Max Guard, making sure it doesn't take damage. I like that play a lot.
I like that play too, because it was well read that Brian was going to go for the Max Steel Spike there, and it's going to avoid the Snarl as well from the Arcanine.
Yeah, I think this has been smart. Hatterene is going to be in a good position. The fact he's held his Dynamax, and this is his only real offensive threat left, so he needs to make the most of it.
And that also stalls out the last turn for Duraludon to have those max moves.
Duraludon just looks a whole lot more unimpressive now. It's back to regular size. It looks so cool when it was Dynamax, and Hatterene looking real impressive, ready to fight there. No, it's back to normal size. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I guess Duraludon's here.
It's like, I got this.
I mean, yeah, I guess you're still here, Duraludon, but you were cool like 2 minutes ago, and now not so much. That said, Hatterene is going to be dealing a whole lot of damage, and you want to be swinging into regular size Pokemon rather than Dynamax. If you can pick up this Duraludon, could be interesting. Leading with a Max Starfall.
Max Starfall into the Duraludon. Does get the knockout.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to do it. It's going to change the terrain as well. Not going to get caught with any silly Will-O-Wisps now from something like that Arcanine.
I think that was a really smart play by Garrett, because that is going to make this Arcanine a little less effective here. But Nightshade coming out from the Dusclops, just going to be able to do a bit of chip here to the Arcanine, and Arcanine going for Snarl.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a testament to the strange typing of the Duraludon, obviously the Dragon Steel, because Steel traditionally just beats Fairies. But obviously with that Dragon type, you balance it up, and, you know, getting a knockout there, really nice to see. And I think this puts Garrett in a really, really solid position. He just needs to make the most of this Indeedee while it's Dynamaxed, and then it'll be good.
Absolutely. Grimmsnarl coming back in now that Duraludon is off the table for Brian. We still haven't seen the 4th Pokemon, so who knows what's in the back here, what Brian really has as kind of the last legs, but Magic Bounce bounces the Swagger back.
Yeah, he was trying to take advantage of the fact that there wasn't a Psychic Terrain in place, so he was able to use the Prankster move. That said, though, he bounced Swagger back. He had his own Safeguard.
Oh, man.
So, yeah. And Grimmsnarl just taking that Max Starfall right on the chin there as Dusclops hazes. And we get to see exactly what he wants. That is a whole lot of damage. Those Snarls racking up and keeping Dusclops around for another turn.
What a play. Magic Bounce of all things. I love it. But now we have no more Trick Room. We have no more Dynamaxed Hatterene. So I will say, though, I think Garrett made the most of those turns.
Yeah, I mean, he got 2 turns of huge damage down. He's going to be able to get Trick Room back up, no problem. There's no convenient way to stop it right now. So this game, keeping it close all the way. I think another attacker from Brian could swing it really quickly if he wants to reveal that soon while Trick Room goes up. You know, Grimmsnarl not known for its huge attacking prowess, and we've seen all 4 moves on it. We know it doesn't have an attacking option. This could be one way to stop it, to see if he wants to make sure Dusclops can't move.
Well, Arcanine going for Snarl. Dusclops actually going to avoid this one, but Hatterene is going to have to take it on the chin. But it's time to see what Hatterene's going to do here. Hatterene going for the Dazzling Gleam, just able to get a bit of damage onto both Pokemon. Going to be enough to knock out the Grimmsnarl, but Arcanine's still in a pretty resounding position at the moment. And Dusclops actually gets the Trick Room off.
Yeah, it doesn't get caught by the confusion from Swagger, so that's pretty nice. I mean, Garrett back in the Trick Room that he loves to be in, but his offensive options are running out a little bit. That said, Brian is down a Pokemon. He is down to his last 2 compared to Garrett's 3 remaining. And there's a lot going to be asked of this Mudsdale, I think. This Mudsdale is going to have to provide all of the offensive power for the tail end of this game.
And there's still another Pokemon in the back for Garrett.
It's the Indeedee. We saw it earlier. Yeah. And Indeedee's not known for huge damage. That said, you've got to work your way through Dusclops, and that is never an easy thing, right? Like that's certainly an ask to get there.
Definitely going to be an ask, but it's not over until it's over. So both of these players are going to give it all they got for the last couple of turns here for Game 2. Who knows if we're going to be going to a Game 3 yet, but Mudsdale has a lot of pressure on its back.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much it can do. It's kind of a shame he's lost the Swagger there, because Mudsdale does have that ability to ramp up its attack stat with the own tempo in the Swagger, which has been really nice. Psychic Surge coming back into play. So indeed, he's probably looking to attack with Psychic and do more damage that way. Hatterene just keeping it safe this turn. Kind of like that play, actually.
I do too. Gonna read the Heavy Slam coming in from the Mudsdale. And Arcanine going for a Heat Wave. Also into the Hatterene. Protect doing a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, this Indeedee, though, is just going to be knocked out on the way in. So we're right back down to the 2-on-2. And the Heavy Slam being revealed on this Mudsdale does mean Hatterene's got a bigger task ahead of it. Dusclops, of course, very difficult to knock out, but provides such slow and steady offensive pressure. I mean, if any. It's known for Nightshading, so you can literally calculate how many turns it takes to win with Nightshade, and I think it's going to be more than the turns it takes to knock out the Dusclops.
Slow goings here for the last couple of turns. Each player just really calculating how much damage they need to do, but Dusclops going for the Will-O-Wisp onto the Mudsdale.
I think that's a fine play. You want to reduce its attack as wherever you can. The burn will also deal that little bit of residual damage. Everything going towards the Arcanine for the offense on this turn. Hatterene there. Just getting a little bit more down with the Psychic. We will get the Heavy Slam connected onto the Hatterene. And yeah, it's now 2v1 on the Dusclops. And I think Brian really kind of pulling this one through from some pretty tricky situations.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even still, I feel Garrett had to play around something really unique, which was getting the Rhyperior knocked out so early. It didn't get a chance to do very much here. But Brian, again, played resoundingly well, given the circumstances, especially when Hatterene ended up doing so much work for Garrett.
I think what's interesting here as well, we just saw the light screen run out. It's with the removal of Rhyperior early on, that meant that the screens got to stay, and that light screen has been very valuable when taking attacks from Hatterene, you know, when you're looking to maneuver through. I think that's been really important. Dusclops taking a little damage from the Heavy Slam and a little bit more from the Heat Wave, and it's going to be not many turns till this Dusclops has to give it up.
It's trying its best, though. That's all we can ask of it.
Yeah, the problem is you can only try for so long with 18 health, particularly when you've got 2 Pokemon attacking you at once. So it looks like Game 3, the players will be getting ready for that as soon as possible. And Dusclops does confirm it has Nightshade. I think all of them do. I think it's the most essential move on it as the follow-up. Heavy Slam. Will Heavy Slam get it?
Yeah, that's going to be enough for the knockout.
Yep. So Game 3 coming through. Brian responding brilliantly to a comprehensive Game 1. And I think both players got to be ready to show us what they can do in Game 3. You don't want to lose that undefeated start to the day, but both players have put on a really good, at least one of the games has gone their way, and they've shown so many cool things about their team.
Garrett went for a very high-risk, high-reward play, switching in the Rhyperior as quickly as they did, and I definitely didn't pay off in that situation. But Brian, again, just did make some incredible adjustments, read that switch very well, and ended up being able to knock out one of the biggest threats on Garrett's team. So that, I think, was one of the biggest swing turns to get Brian that win.
I think what's important is keeping Rhyperior safe if you're Garrett. And to be fair to him, and this is something that a lot of players talk about and say, you know, Trick Room's great, but once you got it set up, the next turn you kind of have to either sack something and go down a Pokemon, or just make a switch and hope that they don't call it. The fact that Game 2, he just called it as it came in, slapped it with a big Max Wormwind, problem solved. No issues here.
Definitely helped out. But now going into Game 3, we didn't see too much of an adjustment from Garrett except for that risky play early on. But it was the same 4 Pokemon as we saw from Game 1. I almost feel as though they might go with the same style of play here. Interestingly enough, no Torkoal.
Yeah, he's been bringing you know, the Torkoal, or just the Rhyperior, not the Torkoal. And it's something I think you've got to consider, right? I mean, the Torkoal does so much damage. Again, it faces that same problem Rhyperior does, in that it needs to be brought in safely. So maybe, you know, we lead with the classic in DD Hatterene, let Indeedee get knocked out. I know you don't maybe want it to, but if you get a free switch in to just start going after people with Torkoal and Trick Room, yeah, that might be the way to do it.
Definitely a play. Brian, though, I think leading with the Duraludon early on was definitely something that Garrett's going to have to play around, especially because of that hidden ability.
Oh, absolutely. You know, does have to be very considerate. I think bringing Dusclops obviously doesn't have a bad type matchup with the Indeedee in the same way. Isn't going to be too scared of Max Steel Spike. I mean, it's still going to take a lot of damage, but it's not going to be as much or as potent as it would be if it was landing on an Indeedee. So I'd imagine we're going to see Dusclops and Indeedee again. But I think the way the rest of the game is going to play out, it's probably going to be different from Garrett.
Well, we're about to get into it. Game 3. Garrett and Brian both have a 1-game win, which means that this Game 3 is going to be very, very important to keep their undefeated streak here. And same leads from Game 2 for Brian. It is going to be that Duraludon and the Grimmsnarl. And would you look at this? Garrett switching things up. Doesn't want to take the risk here. Is just going to bring Rhyperior in early on with that Dusclops. Yeah,
I mean, there's really no reliable way to stop Dusclops setting up Trick Room. So if you don't need to give it any help, if he knows that Brian doesn't have an answer to it, why not just get the Rhyperior in? The other option with Rhyperior being in on the field is you have the option to potentially get hit by a super effective attack. And if you get hit by a super effective attack, set your weakness policy off, Dusclops Trick Rooms, and you can just go wild as soon as you get going with this Rhyperior.
I wonder if you just go for the turn 1 Dynamax as well, just maybe preemptively thinking that the Duraludon might try to target the Rhyperior.
Potentially.
Maybe.
I think you've got to be a little bit cautious of what you're doing. We're going to see Brian Dynamaxing first, I imagine Duraludon again. No reason to be Dynamaxing a Grimmsnarl. Be honest, I didn't even put Dynamax candies on my Grimmsnarl because I refused to Dynamax it. If I do, I've already lost the game. So Duraludon, of course, looks much better when it's taken up the whole screen. Looks real intimidating right now. There isn't going to be... oh, there is the Dynamax. It was a little longer than I anticipated. But that does mean that these Pokemon are both going to be doubling their health pools and potentially causing a whole lot more when it comes to problems. If it can take an attack, such as the Max Steel Spike, and then activate the weakness policy, and then start going to town in Trick Room, this game could get very one-sided very quickly.
And it's really important to note that the Duraludon Dynamaxed first. So
it's quicker, so
yeah.
It's in a good position. I like this play. I like that he's Worm-winded.
Yes, I agree. This is not going to pop the weakness policy, and that's something that Brian has to play around in order to be able to take this match. And also, with the Max Wormwind, you get the attack drop.
Yeah, getting rid of that is really big, and it may help handle this Max Quake a little bit better. We're going to give him an idea. Oh, yeah, he's taking that very well, thanks to the Max Wormwind. And that could be important because he most likely is going to have to take another Max Quake in the following turn.
Bit of a tricky spot,
well,
but Dusclops gets the Trick Room off.
Yeah, and that was a given. There was no way that Brian could stop that. At the same time, he's probably just going to try and play his Duraludon. If he Steel Spikes Rhyperior now, then he's going to be able to get the knockout, and it will die before taking out or activating the weakness policy.
I wonder if this is a situation where you go for a Max Guard.
It's tough because you're on that clock, right? You're on that limited turn.
Yeah.
And there's no real other way to deal with Duraludon. There's no other way to get rid of it apart from Rhyperior. If Torkoal's in the back, might be able to stretch for it a little bit, but of course Steel Dragon does make it harder.
Does make it very difficult to remove that Pokemon.
I'd imagine that we are going to see some just attacks coming out of Rhyperior. This would be a nice play actually. If we do take the Max Guard now and then the Follow Me to take the Steel Spike away from Rhyperior.
I don't know if that works.
Oh, the Stalwart.
Because
yeah.
Stalwart.
Yeah. That's going to be interesting. Steel Spike, we'll just head towards Max Guard. There's going to be pretty dull turn, really.
Yeah, pretty mute turn for both players, but I think the important part is that they both bought a turn of the Dynamax for each other as well as the Trick Room. I think that ends up working out a little bit better for Brian, just because his Pokemon are a little bit faster.
Yep.
But
the thing is, he knows he can take another Max Quake. Because based on how much the first one did, he's pretty confident he can take another Max Quake. So he's got his screen set up. He's in a pretty okay position. And Intimidate from Arcanine here is definitely going to help make those Max Quakes even more manageable.
it absolutely is. Now this is a second attack drop that Rhyperior has gotten, but the helping hand coming up from Indeedee, that might do enough here. We're gonna try it. Max Quake from the Rhyperior on Garrett's side is going to find its mark onto the Duraludon, but it still survives.
Yeah, the combination of Intimidate and the drop from Max Wormwind has caused too many problems right there. Rhyperior's special defense will go up, might help against that Max Steel Spike actually. Obviously keying off a Flash Cannon is going to be a special attack. And there it is, that definitely helps. And now there's a real issue here in that you've got a weakness policy Rhyperior in Trick Room.
You do have a weakness policy Rhyperior, and that is not something that you want to go up against, but it is what Brian has to deal with now. Duraludon and Rhyperior, though, going to lose their Dynamax forms for this end of this turn.
Yep, and honestly, I think Rhyperior losing its Dynamax form could be a benefit. Sounds weird, but hear me out. Now you're not only using max moves, you have access to spread moves such as Rock Slide, and you could just start Rock Sliding. I mean, with a weakness policy boost, it is bringing it back up to neutral, so you're still stretching, I think, on the Duraludon. But you'd be able to get damage down on both. Of course, you could Earthquake as well, but getting that weakness policy, getting those attack stats back up was really important for these last few turns of Trick Room.
Going for the helping hand again, Indeedee is trying to make sure that this Rhyperior can get its attack off, but Duraludon is going to use Protect. Did Garrett read this? Rapier is going for the Earthquake.
He's earthquaked himself.
Oh, he is going to Earthquake the Indeedee as well, but Indeedee is going to be able to take this one. Arcanine, not so much. Arcanine, though, going for the Will-O-Wisp, and Rapier avoids it.
Oh, that's really big. I mean, right now, there's one more turn of Trick Room remaining. It's the last turn. And, you know, you've got both Duraludon and Arcanine so low. You really want to be able to pick up those knockouts now. But if the Will-O-Wisp landed, completely different. Now this last turn is so difficult, I think, to be navigated around.
Well, Duraludon going to get withdrawn. Mudsdale coming out in its place. Did Garrett go for another Earthquake? Both Pokemon actually going to be taken out here, and Grimmsnarl coming back out. Yeah,
I think knowing that both of them would fall to Earthquake is a problem, and you know, Mudsdale's going to be able to take these hits a little bit better. It's not going to be in such a tough position. Rhyperior, though, will knock out the Indeedee on its side of the field this turn. Probably looking to try and switch it up a little bit. But good damage heading towards both Pokemon as Trick Room does end. And now he lost his Indeedee. Guess what? He's going to be able to bring his Dusclops right back in. And I don't think the combination of Grimmsnarl and Mudsdale are going to be able to stop it either. So Trick Room going back up.
Absolutely going to be going back up. But this Rhyperior is so low. Did Rhyperior do enough in this game in order to get Garrett the win? That's the question. It's
clinging on, but I mean, it's got access to Protect. We've seen that. There's no way he's going to get attacked. Max moves are done for the game. Going to be able to take those hits, you know, into a Protect potentially. I don't think there's any reliable way to stop Dusclops. But at the same time, Brian's made some really nice forward-thinking plays in that he's taken out Arcanine, not only to keep it safe, but to provide another Intimidate later, which could be crucial.
Getting another attack drop, especially if Rhyperior is able to survive, would be big. But Swagger onto the Mudsdale. Again, get a chance to see this cheeky play.
Yep, you've got own tempo. You do not need to worry about being confused there, as Mudsdale will heavy slam towards Rhyperior. Even with the boost, you don't get to go through Protect as Trick Room comes back into play from this Dusclops' side of the field. I think everything's going to be riding on this Mudsdale right now with, you know, throw Swagger over to it and just make it do a whole lot of damage.
Potentially seeing it again.
I mean, Rhyperior isn't going to be able to knock out either of these two right now. It's just not. I think it's had its attack stat lowered. Yes, it got the boost back from weakness policy.
It's going to get it again.
Yeah, it's coming down again with the Intimidate. It might get the Arcanine, actually. But I think in the long run, you know, Mudsdale's still going to be in a great position. And we kind of end up back in where we ended up in game number 2, where, hey, you know, ooh, that missed. Rhyperior breaking the screens before it leaves, probably pretty wise. Just making sure that it can stick around and do some more work. But it is going to be facing down a Mudsdale, and that is a huge problem.
Yeah, Mudsdale going for the high horsepower right into the Rhyperior slot. Not going to be able to survive through that. So finally, this Rhyperior gets knocked out, and this does leave Garrett with their last 2 Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, Dusclops and another, we haven't actually seen what it is. It is confirmed to be Hatterene. Was one of those Pokemon that we saw in game number 2 as well. He's running the same 4, actually. He hasn't made any changes over the course of the set.
No changes.
But Brian really bouncing back from that game number 1. A bit of a tricky game number 2, but guess what? You know, he's in a great position right now. This Mudsdale does have a boosted attack thanks to own tempo and Swagger, and should be able to start dealing some big damage. He's going to leave the field right now, though. Looks like Grimmsnarl just coming right back in. Maybe trying to set up a screen of some sort, just to help out against these 2 Pokemon.
Hatterene going for a Protect. Maybe not reading this switch out here, or maybe reading something from this Arcanine. But Will-O-Wisp will connect finally in this game to the Grimmsnarl. We'll get the burn.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. You don't mind your Grimmsnarl being burned. Oh, he's burned behind the safeguard. That's unfortunate. You don't want to be.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, you've already been burned, and it's kind of like trapped in right behind the safeguard. But Brian playing this game very, very wisely. Still has, of course, Duraludon available and the Mudsdale. I'll be curious to see how he kind of repositions the board, but knowing what attacks are coming, he's able to just set up and prep for the end game.
Yeah, that light screen going to be very effective here. Nightshade now finding its mark onto the Grimmsnarl, and definitely going to help here. Dazzling Gleam also from Garrett's Hatterene. Going to be able to connect with both Pokemon. Grimmsnarl gets knocked out, but Arcanine still holds on.
Yeah, Arcanine sticking around definitely helps out here. Certainly causes some problems. Hatterene getting knocked down. Arcanine landing those Snarls. So with the combination of Light Screen and Snarl, I think whatever Pokemon he brings in next, potentially, honestly, the Mudsdale with the Assault Vest stacking on top of all of that, should be able to come in and start kind of tidying up this game a little bit.
Good adjustments coming in from both players. I like that we've seen kind of a difference of play style over the course of all 3 games, but it does look as though Brian is just a bit ahead to Duraludon on the field, maybe saving that Mudsdale just in case we can get some more chip damage out from Arcanine as well as that Duraludon.
Well, Duraludon's going to just wait until Trick Room's over. This Protect
also true.
Pretty much confirms it, and then it's going to be in a better position to knock out this Hatterene. Of course, the Hatterene may have the option to protect itself, which could make him look a little bit silly, but Arcanine also going to be afforded some chances to just try and attack. The Nightshade landing into Duraludon as well, and there's the Snarl, so this Hatterene really limited on its attacking opportunity right now.
Yeah, Hatterene really wants to be able to get some damage off, but Trick Room is now over. Brian successfully stalling it out, and it might just be a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Hatterene has to protect. Dusclops could set up Trick Room again. If Hatterene doesn't protect, then it just gets caught by Flash Cannon, and maybe Brian's going to try and read into that a little bit and just get some more damage down on Dusclops.
Well, Heat Wave coming out from Arcanine. Not going to be able to get through the Protect, but at least get some chip onto Dusclops. And Duraludon going for the Draco Meteor does read the Protect into the Dusclops. Oh, but it hangs on.
I really like that play, though, by Brian, going on the offense at that last possible moment, just so you don't have to play the whole game in Trick Room. But at the same time, it's not enough. You know, you're not able to deal with it. What he really wants is a situation where Duraludon can freely attack Hatterene, and he's not being afforded it. Right now as well, his special attack is significantly lowered, so it's a tough one. It's a big ask from both these Pokemon to do much more this turn. And it could come down to just a Mudsdale on its own doing everything it needs to. I think between Hatterene and Dusclops, they are going to be able to tidy up Duraludon and Arcanine and then put everything onto Mudsdale.
Dusclops using Nightshade.
Yeah, you mean, you know it's a numerical value of how much it does. It does damage by level, so you know you're guaranteed the knockout there. You don't have to worry, and Hatterene knows how low Arcanine is, knows it's going to be a single target as well. But it's not enough to get there. All of those Snarls, all of those light screens coming together. The Heat Wave will not land on Hatterene. It will land on Dusclops and pick up the knockout there. So I think Brian, keeping it so close. But he is going to be able to bring in, of course, that Mudsdale. We've seen it already. We know it has heavy slam. I think Hatterene probably not going to be able to get there against the two of them. This Arcanine, though, has been so good as a special defensive tank.
It's been really good. I think that's one of my favorite Pokemon right now, and it's only because there's so many different ways that you can actually train up that Arcanine. But Hatterene going for Psychic now, single targeted attack onto the Mudsdale. This is kind of Garrett's last chance to be able to try to chip away at the Mudsdale. Mudsdale now going for a heavy slam from Brian into the Hatterene, and that's enough for the knockout. Brian taking this set.
Yeah, Brian doing really well to swing the game back. Game 1 very comfortably in Garrett's favor, but Brian making some delightful adaptations.